Hello, my name is Briley Wood. This is my first video for my AICE Media Studies Creative Critical Reflection. For this video, I kind of wanted to animate one of my dragon characters I have created. I just thought that it would be a cool way for me to add these little reactions and facial expressions through my character. And I will be answering the question, how does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? For this project, I used, but I also challenged a bunch of common conventions within the apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic genre. I am a huge horror fan, horror, apocalyptic, such and such. And so through all the movies that I have watched and all my research, I have found that this film relies mainly on isolation, survival, and tension created through either extremely hyper, extremely dangerous, immediately putting you into danger environments, or empty and silent environments. And I kind of wanted to recreate that in my film. I use these conventions by setting my film in the forest, more specifically Jennings State Park, as it is right in my backyard, and it is a forest that me and my friends go to all the time in the middle of the night, 2 in the morning, to go ghost hunting, since Jennings is the most haunted forest in all of Florida. But I had decided that that would be the perfect place to set up my film. I thought that it would help to create a sense of abandonment and danger, as the main plot is, these teenagers who are struggling to adapt after humanity was completely destroyed. I also wanted to use a bunch of handheld camera movements and a bunch of natural lighting in order to reflect kind of realism and the instability of the scene. A lot of the scenes that we had captured had diegetic thunder and such, as we had filmed right before a storm. And these are all very common features of more survival-based films. But I also wanted to challenge genre expectations. Usually in horror films, they're focusing on, usually in horror post-apocalyptic films, they're focusing on a single male protagonist or a bunch of male protagonists, and there's just one lonely female who is perceived to be strong and independent, but she usually comes off as annoying and is only there to bring up the male protagonists. I wanted to feature a group of mixed characters all working together. I'm a woman myself. My friend Abby and my friend Sky, who also was featured in my film, are also women. I did have my friends Daniel Flanagan and Jeremy also featured in the film, as they are some of my closest friends and they were readily available to help with my film. But I wanted to shift the focus away from your typical lone survival narrative, and I wanted to show a sort of cooperation and shared survival between all my characters. I avoided making the opening of my story overly action driven, and I wanted to focus on the atmosphere and the tension in order to give it a more slower, realistic tone to open up and be a potential opening for a film. In terms of representation wise, I wanted to feature a diverse group of characters across gender, but also across ethnicity. My friend Jeremy, he is a Mexican, and I wanted to portray him as a protective and capable character who wields a weapon. And I find that to be similar to his personality in person, because he is a very protective and capable person. And I wanted to make it known that he will help and he will be a great contributor to the group's survival. And it avoids your stereotypical Mexican portrayals by not reducing him to a background character or even a comedic role, because that's usually how it goes when it comes to Mexican or even Asian characters, or even overweight female characters. They're just there to be They're just there for comedic relief. I also wanted to have, like I said before, some female characters. Myself and Abby were presented as strong and independent. And both of us being blonde women, I wanted to shy away from the dumb blonde stereotype, as all throughout my entire life, I've always been seen as the dumb blonde. Whenever I make a stupid mistake, it's always, oh, you're just a dumb blonde. Whereas when anyone else would make the same mistake, it's just a mistake. So I didn't want it to be like passive or dependent on the dumb blonde stereotype. I just wanted to portray my characters as active participants in the survival decisions and challenge your traditional gender expectations within media. Overall, my product used a bunch of genre conventions, as I still wanted to stick with your simple genre conventions to create a believable post-apocalyptic setting. But again, I also wanted to challenge those stereotypes in character roles, gender roles, and representation of these certain social groups. This concludes my first video answering my first question.
Alright. Alright, sit down. We received the footage. Isolated setting, abandoned forest, weapon. Let's cut to the chase. Your production skills, did they actually improve? Or were they just wandering the woods with a camera?
They definitely developed throughout the project, especially when it came to my editing skills. I didn't have access to all these fancy schmancy, high quality, expensive editing tools. I just used CapCut. Because of this, I learned how to use all these basic tools more effectively, and I had to, use the free trial for CapCut Premium. In my early planning and filming blogs, that's not really more evidence you need to look into, but I'm mainly focused on just getting and developing the shots, but when I had started my editing, I realized that I needed to improve the pacing and the cutting and the continuity in order to make my opening feel more professional.
So you're telling me that editing saved this entire thing?
In a way, yes. Since I couldn't rely on like expensive cameras or advanced software, I used my editing and soundtracks that I found online to build tension. I had edited and slowed down certain shots. I had trimmed a lot of my clips pretty short. I focused on the pacing of the editing in order to create suspense. In my editing updates blog, I had, again, not more evidence you need to look into. I had went into depth about how I adjusted the timing of my shots because my characters weren't really on pace at some points, but that's fine. I just had to adjust the timing in order to make the characters' movements feel more like in sync and have good continuity. I feel like this created a stronger post-apocalyptic atmosphere without having a high production value.
But the footage isn't Hollywood quality,
is it? No. But that's, one of the ways that my production skills didn't fully develop. Like I said, I didn't have access to high quality, expensive video cameras because I'm a little broke. So the video resolution wasn't as, high quality. It wasn't as sharp as I wanted it to be. Because of this limitation, I had to work around the issue rather than, fully improve the visual quality. I had mentioned in my filming updates blog, not evidence that you need to look into, that the farther away shots had lower quality, which is why I tried to use more close-up shots instead, which showed my adaptation to this difficulty, but it also highlighted the limits of my equipment.
And the audio. I've heard clearer, more precise words from a walkie-talkie.
Audio was another area that didn't develop as much as I wanted. I didn't have access to external microphones. I did when I had refilmed, but those clips got deleted. I also didn't have professional sound equipment, so I couldn't exactly capture high quality audio, especially with all the wind. Because of this, I relied more on minimal dialogue and diegetic and non-diegetic noises, which had a big influence on my creative decisions, but it also meant that my technical sound production skills weren't improving at all. In my filming reflections, I had noted that some of the audio was not usable, and it pushed me to do more of a visual storytelling approach.
So, what you're saying is that your limitations shape your style? Is that what I'm getting from this?
Exactly. While I had improved my editing skills, filming and sound production was limited by my equipment. But these challenges forced me to become more thoughtful in my editing and the composition of the shots. I had learned how to completely block out background audio and just get, the dialogue. I was able to maintain continuity between the shots by focusing on the trimming and stuff. And I had learned how to build suspense through the pacing of my film. In the reflection of my rough cut, I had talked about how my transitions and the removing of my clips had lowered the overall quality, which had, shown development in my post-production skills.
So, let me get this straight. Your editing improved, but your camera and audio didn't?
That's correct. My strongest development was the pacing within my editing, and the timing and the structure, structuring the opening. But like I said, lack of professional equipment, and the lack of high quality microphones, it did not improve on the same level, It demonstrated both the development and the limitations within my production skills,
Not perfect, but you adapted, I guess you could say. Just a little bit.
Exactly. Overall, my production skills mainly just developed in editing and the post-production, but the filming quality and the audio, still remained limited because of the lack of equipment. But despite this, I, adapted my style to work with those, setbacks, which helped me to create a more suspenseful opening, if I do say so myself.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Celebrity Archives. Thanks for joining us today. Here we have with us Riley Wood, who just released a trailer for her new post-apocalyptic film, The Last Transmission. She has with her Sky Burke, who's played as a character in her film. So, Riley, your new post-apocalyptic trailer has been getting a whole bunch of popularity already. Can you tell us how your opening engages the audience?
Yeah, absolutely.
one of the main ways that my opening engages my audience is through suspense and enigma. Right from the start, the audience sees 5 characters walking alone through an isolated forest. And that immediately raises questions, you know, it creates an enigma. What are they doing? Why are they there? Where is everyone else? They don't know who the characters are, obviously. Like what is happening to the world, or what the characters are having to protect themselves from. If you go and read my very short blog titled From Thoughts to Concepts, in which I planned my opening for this film, I actually talked about how I did not want to drop my audience, like, straight into immediate action, just without any explanation. And instead, I wanted to drop them into, like, calm, peaceful suspense without any prior knowledge, so that they're encouraged to keep watching and figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like, as I was reading the script, I was like, oh, so this is peaceful, but it's ominous at the same time. What are we doing? And I was just so intrigued. I was just like, this is interesting. This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm here right now. Definitely, yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
So, you're relying on suspense. Exactly. Instead of immediately showing a dramatic, incredibly, like, intense event, I focused on slower, more building tension. I had my characters move throughout the forest with great caution, with one of them holding a weapon. Well, some of them were holding a weapon. One of them was holding a BB gun. The others had bats. Some of them had backpacks. With everyone constantly looking around, kind of being aware of their surroundings a lot. This created a sense of danger, even though nothing is directly shown. In my brainstorm blog, I discussed how post-apocalyptic film openings often build suspense through their atmosphere rather than through dialogue. Which is mainly why I wanted to build suspense through, like, the setting, the eerie noises, the eerie music. And that's why I chose, like, minimal dialogue, just to have more visual storytelling, if that makes sense. So, how does your opening appeal to audiences?
Oh, character design was a big one for you, wasn't it?
It really was. The character design was a way that I wanted to engage my audience. The hoodie and the bandana that covered one of my characters, Jeremy's faces, it made his character seem ominous, but also protective at the same time. And that allowed the audience to, like, project themselves onto him and kind of, like, relate to him in a way. Additionally, some of my characters, like I said before, they either had backpacks or weapons like BB guns and bats. In my casting rules blog, I had explained that I wanted my characters to feel like survivors rather than, like, a survivor-specific personality. You know what I mean? In a bunch of, like, horror movies, post-apocalyptic movies, a bunch of the characters have, like, a survivor personality rather than being portrayed as a survivor as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I said that I wanted my actors to be comfortable performing emotional reactions and physical movements in order to fit, like, the on-edge suspenseful tone of the genre as a whole. I felt like that made the opening a lot more immersive because the audience is following along the world right next to the characters through a more immersive setting. So, yeah.
100%. Got that.
Clock it,
yes! Yes.
Does your camera work at all help with your audience engagement?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
100%,
most definitely.
100%.
I utilize a bunch of, like, tracking shots, establishing shots, and a couple of mid shots that follow my characters throughout the setting of the forest. And this made as I said, it made it more of an immersive experience, making the audience feel as though they're walking right alongside of my characters. In one of my filming updates blog titled Building the Tension, I had mentioned that I tested wider shots and I had experimented with my camera angles a lot. I just feel as though the camera angles also help with that immersiveness and they help the audience to feel involved in the journey rather than just observing it from their home or from a screen, you know? So, what about distribution? Would this work as, say, a real media text? In terms of distribution, I feel like my film would be distributed as an opening to, like, a feature-length film. Obviously aimed at teenagers and young adults who enjoy post-apocalyptic, and other, like, thriller and dystopian genres. Because of this target audience, I feel like my film would mainly be promoted through social media platforms. Most definitely.
Yes, yes.
You know, a bunch of the teenagers and young adults, they're all on their TikTok, their Instagrammy, their Snappy Chatty, whatever it is. In my film overview vlog, I had explained that my opening is designed to, like, hook audience quickly, and I feel like that makes it, like, suitable for, like, teaser marketing. Even, like, outside of social media, like, platforms like short teaser trailers or, like, behind the scenes clips, mainly, like, YouTube,
Yeah.
I think, and stuff like that. I feel like my hook would make it suitable and, like, easier for, like, teaser marketing on apps and stuff like that. So, would this be theatrical or streaming? I feel like it would work a lot better as a streaming release. Most post-apocalyptic content performs extremely well on streaming platforms like this because audiences really enjoy, especially teenagers and young adults, they really enjoy
Myself included.
they really enjoy binge watching survival narratives, like me too. Like I binge watch like all the Saw movies.
I was there. I had to go to the sheets, but it's okay.
But this mysterious opening like encourages our viewers to continue watching. My opening also like fits the style of like modern streaming series. Like a lot of the stuff that you see nowadays, I feel like the style of my opening really like fits into that like box. And it's like a film that relies on like long form storytelling.
Yeah.
So I feel like it definitely fits the style of modern streaming services. So how would you advertise it? I think personally, I would advertise it by like releasing short teaser clips like I have already, and that seems to be working really well. Showing all of our characters, maybe like one-on-one shots. Me too.
Yes,
Me too.
yes.
Like us walking through like the forest without revealing too much, like I kind of already have released with my first clip. I feel like this mirrors the original enigma I've created in the opening. In my editing updates blog, I had discussed a lot about pacing and tension, and I feel like those same clips could be used for marketing. Posters would also be a pretty cool idea. They could like focus on like the costume design, because I tried to aim for like an old, like broken down, like
rugged,
worn, rugged, dirty clothes kind of like design on the costumes.
post-apocalyptic, you would say.
Like the posters could focus on those costumes and like the isolated setting that would like reinforce my genre. So let's say overall, how does your product engage audiences? Overall, I'd say my product engages audience through mystery, suspense, and I feel like I had a bunch of immersive camera work done on my film. The ominous characters allow, like I said before, the viewers to connect with both the characters and the story, while like the isolated forest setting helps to build tension. My distribution strategy would mainly focus, like I said, streaming platforms, social media promotion, and it would target fans of post-apocalyptic genres, which mainly teenagers and young adults. All of these decisions were influenced by my planning, my filming, and my research blogs. And they all helped me to shape how my audience would experience my opening.
100%.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies, very much for coming on to my show. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Peace. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for letting us come on your show.
Thank you so much. We love you all.
Bye.
Mr. President, over here. Whoa, ladies, one at a time. I'll answer all your questions. You, right there. What was your question? I was just wondering, what technologies did you use in your latest project? I'm talking about that apocalyptic film opening that you just came out with, Alright, so the technologies that I had integrated into this project, it had a combination of hardware, software, online tools too, all of which helped me plan and film and edit my post-apocalyptic opening, Mr. President, what about hardware? What did you actually use to film? Well, for my hardware, I relied on the accessible equipment that I had on me instead of the professional gear. I like to stay eco-friendly. I had used my phone, to capture the footage in a local forest that's right behind my house. It's not high end, but I was allowed to do multiple takes and experiment with different shot types and angles and such. You'll see if you go to my filming update blogs. I had explained how I adjusted my shot distances, after noticing that the wider shots had reduced my video quality. This shows just how well I adapted to my filming approach based on the limitations of my hardware. Oh wow, so you didn't even have any expensive equipment? That's correct, random citizen. I didn't have access to professional cameras. I didn't have any external microphones. I mean, I did during my second time filming, but then those clips got deleted, so... Anyways, that's another story for another day. But because of this, I had to carefully stabilize my shots, and I mainly had to rely on, you guessed it, natural lighting. Eco-friendly. This helped to, influence my creative decisions, especially in using the daylight of the forest, which wasn't really daylight because it was dark and stormy out, but it just kept the movement controlled. These limitations pushed me to focus on my framing and my composition instead of relying on advanced equipment. What about your software? Did you actually put the film together? Software played a major role in my project, especially during the editing. I used basic editing softwares in order to trim my clips, put my shots in order, and adjust the pacing. In my editing updates blog, I had talked about how I improved my editing skills by learning how to cut these clips more precisely and slowing down the pacing to build suspense. Even without my professional software, I learned how to structure the opening effectively and create perfect continuity between shots. Did you use any effects? I like to keep my effects minimal, but I focus on the transitions and the pacings. I removed a few weaker clips, adjusted the timing, and I refined the sequence in order to create a suspenseful and very, very tense atmosphere. This shows how I just use my editing technology to enhance how I told my story, even when I didn't have any fancy schmancy equipment. My rough cut reflection blog also explains how I reviewed my footage and refined my final cut using the software that I used.
And online technologies. What about those? Did those help?
Online technologies were essential throughout the play. I use online platforms in order to research my post-apocalyptic conventions, like Google, Bing, Yahoo. This influenced the costume design, the setting, and the tone. I also use these online tools to plan my blogs and document my progress.
So the internet shaped your film?
Oh, absolutely. I just love my people. And so I did a lot of research on you guys. And all of that research helped me to understand your expectations for my genre and my film. I also use these resources to review my editing techniques and to improve my work.
So overall, how did you integrate all of this technology?
Overall, I integrated my hardware by filming and using accessible camera equipment, not all that fancy schmancy stuff. And I use this accessible equipment software by editing and structuring my opening and online technologies through my research, my planning, and my blogs. All of these technologies played a different role, and together they allowed me to complete my opening. Final question, Mr. President. How did technology help your final product? Yes, even though the technology was basic, learning how to use this technology to my advantage improved my editing, my planning, and my overall production. By combining hardware, software, and online tools, I was able to create a cohesive opening, and I was also able to document all of my development on all of my blogs. You guys should all go read them, because I'm just so cool. Alright, that's all the time I have. Thank you, everybody. I love you, my citizens.